Watch out, it's a live mic.
This is Mark McNeese in New York City, and you're listening to another edition of the Live Mic Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another Live Mic Podcast. I have a wonderful person on the line today to interview. His name is James Hayes. He's an author, previously an activist, and let's just dive right into that. James, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your time and speaking with me and sharing the word.
We were talking before we started recording, and you're in Houston.
Yes, wonderful Houston in the middle of the summer.
Yes, it's hot everywhere, but let's start with your life a little bit. Tell people about yourself. I know that you're from there.
Yes, I was born in Houston. I lived and grew up in a suburb. This was my parents' dream, basically. They were both from small towns in East Texas. And after World War II, they migrated south to Houston and made wonderful lives for themselves here. And I came along in 1957 and grew up in Pasadena, a suburb of Houston.
And have you ever wanted to go I mean, I'm sure you've traveled, but have you ever wanted to leave? Or is this...
Absolutely. I've done that many times. I left Houston the first time when I went to college, and then I lived in Dallas for a few years, and I've lived all around Texas. But yes, I've made several attempts to leave Texas, although I do love the state. But in the middle of the Bible Belt and being a gay man growing up in the 70s, it was not exactly the ideal location. But there again, it goes back to the roots of Texas itself. We're all a little rebellious here. And I've spent some time in Seattle, and I spent a few months in Ireland looking at different locations. But something always seems to have drawn me back here. And when I left Houston in 1978, I didn't think I would ever return. Mm-hmm. But as life, the changes in life, my father became ill and passed away very quickly in 1998. My mother was elderly. And I ended up moving back to Houston 16 years ago now, of all things, to be near my mother as she was in her latter years.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about your parents, because your book is How Christianity Sustains a Gay Man. I don't know why I'm stumbling over those.
Because it's a long title.
How Christianity Sustains, it's the S's, I think. Sustains a Gay Man. And the book is about your life and your journey, and you touch on having grown up in a Southern Baptist home near Houston. So
yes.
Can you talk about that and what
Absolutely.
That was like? Because an awful lot of people who grow up in those households don't have the experiences you had.
Well, a lot of people in the South, in the middle of the Bible Belt down here, anyone who was raised in a Southern Baptist family may know what I went through. And as time has gone by, of course, you alter your views on things. But my parents were very good people. They were very good people. They believed in their Southern Baptist religion and that faith because they really had no reason to challenge it until I came along. Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to throw in there that's what I was referring to, because there are certainly folks who come from very religious families where the family does not evolve, and it never heals.
And that is why this book, How Christianity Sustains a Gay Man, the book itself is as simple or as complex as a reader might want it to be, but the book is definitely as much about my mother as it is about me. Because my mother was a hardcore Baptist before I came around, obviously. Mm-hmm. And we did not get along, but at the same time, we were soulmates. And my mother never used the word. In fact, the word never appeared in my vocabulary until a neighbor of my mother's mentioned that to me after my mother had passed away. Mm-hmm. But thinking back on it, my mother was a remarkable woman who came from East Texas, graduated from a tiny community and ended up with a master's degree from the University of Houston and taught school in the public schools for 25 years. So her transition from what she grew up in to what she became, she naturally had a questioning mind. And her journey, we as I mentioned, we fought from my teenage years until I was 35 because I was challenging her beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to the point where she was never going to give up on me. And she tried for years to convert me.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, the whole belief that being gay is a sin and yada, yada, yada. But when she realized that I was not going to give in, and through the course of events that happened, she realized that she started thinking, well, why is he this way?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I understand more? And she just was on a quest to understand, and she did.
Mm-hmm.
She finally understood it, accepted me, and overcame the Southern Baptist beliefs that had been brainwashed into her.
Yeah.
So the book is about my parents and my mother specifically as much as it is about me, because it shows other people that we can assimilate. We can learn to get along.
Yeah, I had a sort of similar experience with my birth mother. I'm adopted. I'm not my birth mother. I take that back. My adopted mother. I'm adopted. But when she first found out I was gay, I was in high school, and it was ugly. It was not pretty. But
Absolutely.
Many years later, she evolved and didn't want to lose her son, and she ended up apologizing to me and saying that that's how she'd been taught, because
Absolutely.
It was really, I think it was.
You would realize how fortunate we were.
Well, I think it was.
I
think she went to a Pentecostal church. It wasn't Baptist.
A light rain. Baptist or hard rain. You know what I mean? Yes.
But so some of us are fortunate enough to have that with our parents, or at least one of them, before they leave the earth.
How long have you been out? I've been out since 1980.
I'm going to say 76. I was in
Difficult
I
time.
was in high school in Indiana. I sort of came out. I was outed. It's a long story. I can't take time up with it. But I came out in high school, and I had known. You mentioned here. I was reading about from the book that intermediate through high school were difficult years for you, and I knew that I was same-sex attracted, which is how I referred to it for children when I was very young. Because to me, gay is an adult identity. But I knew that I was same-sex attracted when I was really small. And I never questioned it. It's just who I was. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Like, why was I not supposed to be that way? So that was not my struggle. My struggle was with a society that was hostile to me. And having to learn to live with that without destroying myself.
Absolutely. That I can understand that. At the core of mine, with the same things, the hostile society. The Bible Belt is so strong down here. Their influence is so strong.
Oh my gosh,
I mean,
yes.
This was the time they were picketing us. They were boarding up fences and not letting people come into hospitals to visit people dying, and condemning us all to hell, simply because they did not want to accept that we were okay. So yes, it's society condemning us, but I was so scarred by the Southern Baptist upbringing that I had, it took me a while to grow beyond that. And they definitely try to suppress, and it leads to self-destructive behavior, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had a brother who had polio. Is he surviving?
Yes. He lives nearby here in a suburb of Houston. He's doing quite well.
Okay.
He was a major influence on me, though I really didn't even think about it at the time. In retrospect, you look back on those things and you really try putting the puzzle together of how did I become this way. But from an early age, I was compassionate.
Now there are
And
two. Go ahead.
I didn't want to dwell on that, but yes, the storyline of that first book really is just a chronological story of my spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come out until I was in college. I was married at the time, and that was an experience of its own, obviously. But my wife was very loving, and we obviously wanted each other to be happy, and we knew that we could not be happy together.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a wonderful relief that she was an angel, as I refer to her in the book,
Mm-hmm.
that allowed me to move on and become myself. Of course, it was a difficult time.
Well, yeah, because you mentioned substance abuse or
Yes,
alcohol
the
abuse.
self-destructive behavior of the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
when I was dealing with the frustration of the repression, the things, the forces, as you mentioned, the society that was just anti-us, totally against us. And that's all the forces that I was dealing with. I was fortunate enough that I could think through it and survive through it and grow. That's one thing that writing has always done for me, and I've always written from first grade on. I've always been a writer, and it would allow me different things, like sometimes for fun, sometimes just to escape, other times for personal growth, therapy.
Sure. Do you I wanted to ask you about your activist years or your involvement.
I became an activist out of necessity, I will say. I was in a very negative relationship for several years throughout the 80s, but I was witnessing what was going on in Texas, especially, where AIDS was destroying everything and everyone. And by 1993, when I was resurfacing from the negativity of a relationship that I had for those few years, my closest friends that I had left at that point were becoming seriously ill, and I felt like I needed to do something to help. So I became an activist. I just felt I had to.
Mm-hmm.
I had to, and as I document in the book, I just had to. I had to do something to try to help my friends, so I formed my own nonprofit organization, used some of my original music to transcend the differences. Our most successful venture was we had a public access TV show for 2 years, which reached a huge audience in the Austin, Texas area. And it was just a wonderful experience because it allowed the direct connection with people that I was trying to reach.
Mm-hmm.
That's always the goal.
What's your life now? Tell me about your life now.
My life now has been quite amazing. It's wonderful to live so long that we see the results of our efforts. Who would have ever thought that we could have equal rights and fair taxation and the ability to marry? I noticed that I believe you recently married as well. We got married in April of 15. And it's just a wonderful life. I wish I was 25. Not that I would want to go through it all again.
I would like to be 40. 40 was a really nice
40
year.
is a good one?
For me, 40 was a good year because the mistakes were behind me, some of them. But
Right.
August 22nd will be 3 years for us. We've been together. We've been together for almost 10. December 13th will be 10 years, and I will be celebrating in Las Vegas, visiting old friends of mine that I haven't seen for 10 years.
We've been together for 6 years, a little over 6 years now, and we married. It was important to me. I was not going to wait on the Supreme Court to make their ruling, especially in the state of Texas, because I really thought Texas would fight it more. And so we went to New Mexico, and we're married by a Christian minister in New Mexico in April of 15. And I was surprised and happy, obviously, when the Supreme Court made their ruling, because after all these years, we finally have fair taxation, which is very important to me, I had to pay single tax rates for 30 years.
Yeah, that's a conversation because we file. I liked filing my own taxes because then I knew how much I got back. But we file jointly now, and
Yes.
we don't file married separately because it's higher tax rate.
It's a higher rate. Yeah, we did ours for the first time this year as well.
But
And it's just
I have no-
amazing that
But I have no idea. Like, is any of this mine? I don't know. It's because they don't break it down. You don't know who's.
no, you lump it together and be glad you've married someone that you love and trust.
Yeah.
I want to talk briefly, if I may, about the fact that this book that we're speaking of today, How Christianity Sustains a Gay Man, is the first of 3 books that I've written in the last 8 months.
Oh wow. Please.
And I want to, if I may, I'd like to speak about that.
Sure. Yeah.
I wanted this book to be the foundation for my writing career that I'm launching rather late in life. I self-published 20 years ago my music and some essays with my nonprofit, but I really feel revitalized now that we do have some equal rights. I have a wonderful husband as a major support structure in my life. And I always thought if I lived long enough, I'd get back to some of the notes that I've taken over the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a closet full of notes here of things that I have jotted down. And when I decided that I would want to publish at this stage, I thought, let me work on this one, And it was very crucial to me that I wanted this first book to be the first one to be published, because when you look at the title, it's almost a contradiction. Christianity and gay in the same sentence.
Yeah.
I didn't really think it was going to be a popular book, and I knew that going in, because Christians have been putting down gays for years. Gays usually have turned the other cheek and not wanted to deal with it. But when it gets to the point that now the Christians are telling us we can't even be Christians, that was just too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like they've given me hell for, 40 years. Now they're telling me I can't even be a Christian. That was just too much, because as you look at the book, you see the things that I personally went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I document the things that my deceased friends and others have gone through. So I wanted the book, How Christianity Sustains a Gay Man, to be the foundation for whatever else comes later.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very blessed to find a publisher. Most publishers all the publishers I contacted in the States would not touch it, would not touch the topic of the book. And I was fortunate to discover Electronic Publishing, and my publisher is in Canada. She's been obviously my biggest supporter, mm-hmm. because she got it instantly. She knew from the title, she knew exactly what I was trying to do. I wrote the book to help others, thinking that some of my experiences people could relate to and it might help other people. I gave her the cover idea. She nailed it perfectly. The cover speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that was probably not going to be a big money maker for any publishers who even had the nerve to, touch the subject. But I wanted that to be the foundation. And since I did find that publisher, within 2 months I'd finished my second book, a novel, The Witness Chronicles. Within another 2 months I'd finished a hilarious novel called Gravy in the Pie, which will be out within the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. So I just wanted to touch on the fact that briefly that I did want this first book to be the foundation, and I've been so fortunate to find a publisher that was willing to do it,
mm-hmm.
that now she's totally behind me, and everything I want to publish, she doesn't change a word.
Excellent.
I can sink or swim on my own.
That's really great. Now, do you? I wanted to ask you if you have a church home.
No, I support no organized religion.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So no, I don't go to church. I'm not saying anything bad or negative about it. As I point out in my book, what that book is, it is my personal testimony. I don't tell anyone what to believe. As I've contacted some of my best supporters from that book have just really blown me away with what they've said. Nothing but compliments. Gay people obviously can relate to it. Parents with gay kids say it gives them great understanding. People read it just because they, are curious about faith. I would like to tell you one story and why I love electronic publishing. I was in a chat room 5-6 weeks ago at this point, and a man from Nigeria, a gay man from Nigeria, began chatting with me, and he questioned the title of my book. He was angry, though we were in a Christian chat room.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell he was angry. He was doubtful. He was obviously hurting, and he told me that he could be killed on the spot just for being gay. And I could understand his frustration. He wanted me to chat with him and tell him the context of my book, and you can't really tell someone what a 30,000-word book is in a chat room. So I suggested that he at least go to clublighthousepublishing.com or to amazon.com and see the synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
He was afraid to purchase the book and download it because he could be killed.
Yeah.
But he was angry and frustrated. But I waited for him. I waited about 10 minutes and gave him time. And he actually did go to Amazon, I believe, and looked at the synopsis and read it and came back. And I really believe the synopsis alone had changed his personality. He was no longer angry. He believed from reading the synopsis, from some of the experiences that I went through, I think it gave him some strength. He congratulated me on my marriage. I believe it helped him, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that connection has been the strongest one that I've had with a reader since that book has been published, because you just never really know how it's going to touch someone. But this man in Nigeria who could be killed just for being gay gave me that feedback and that great reward from that book. I just had to throw that in. I'm sorry. That was just something that was very important to me when we speak often of connecting. And
yeah, I'm glad you did, because sometimes I'll hear from somebody who reads my website and lives, in a rural community somewhere, and it just means a great deal to me. So
yes,
I understand
that's the reason we do it. That's the reason we do it, is to connect with people.
Yeah. Now, James, it's been great to have you on. I want to remind everybody the book is How Christianity Sustains a Gay Man by J.H. Hayes. You can find it on Amazon, and your publisher, the publisher again is
Club Lighthouse
Publishing.com.
Right. And also at my website, which is just the initial J.H. Hayes, Hayes.com. I definitely want to thank you, Mark. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
And sharing my experiences and my writing. I'm really looking forward to launching this career. As I've said, I've already got my second book published. My third will be published within a week or two. So I appreciate your helping me gain some insight and letting people know about me.
My pleasure, and absolutely stay in touch, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.